What's up, guys? Ming the Merciless 93 here for PokerVIP.com. We're back with part 2 of Sweating John. It looks like we have a scenario where we've raised it up with Ace-King. Let me just go back a second and we'll check that out. Make sure we got something grooving on here. Yeah, we'll just get back into our more poker strategy, see how John's doing at the table. So it looks like we're going to be 3-betting with our Ace-King combo on table 1, and we're going to get cold flat called. That's always fun. That's always fun. And on this board texture, we should just be checking. The way I handle Ace-King in these scenarios is if I have a backdoor flush draw, I'm generally going to be betting because I can barrel off with the 2 overs and hitting the card on the turn. And if you don't have the backdoor flush draw, you're probably just going to want to check if it's a board texture that's going to favor the flat caller, and you're just not going to have enough equity. So we kind of are in the similar spot to the king-queen hand that we played just a little while ago, where you're not going to get a ton of folds. You don't really want to barrel that combo. And even though you might win some percent of the time, like if you fired off like 380 or something here, you might get him to fold a small pair, some weird shit. You might get him to fold ace-queen offsuit, no heart. But generally, it's going to be pretty tough to get folds here. It's going to be pretty tough to continue out of position. You'd rather just sacrifice the pot. This is just a check fold. We call preflop with our king of hearts. Well, yeah, king of hearts, 9 of clubs. And I'm good betting this board and then continuing on turns and rivers that are good for us, so that's good. Looks like we are going to take it down with our ace-king, so that's also a good result, but I don't think that that is where we want to be. You're going to check the king-10 down here on table 3 with top pair, 3 spades, and call a bet. Super not an exciting spot, that's for sure. I like the 3-bet coming in with 5-7 on table 1, so that's good. Folding all this other trash. We just check call. And then we check again. I think that it's reasonable to lead here. I just want to kind of talk about check calling and leading ranges. This is a board where when your opponent like if he's over c-betting flops in spots like this, and then under betting turns, you really want to have a leading range on the turn because you're basically going to protect your hand and you're going to deny your opponent equity. So if you know that your opponent's going to take a hand, let's just say king-queen with the queen of spades, for instance, and he'll c-bet the flop because he kind of likes it, kind of connects with it. But then once you call, he goes into super passive, check back, bullshit mode, and you're kind of on a free roll for leading the turn, right? Because if he has a slightly better hand, you're probably going to see a showdown, and you probably would have played that street anyway. And if he has a worse hand that still has a call, you know, something like a queen of spades, chances are just going to call you and never really raise you. So the only time you get punished for having a leading range here is when your opponent starts semi-bluff raising. Because when he starts semi-bluff raising, then we get into folding the best hand on the turn, and that's not where we want to be. But in general, your opponents are going to play relatively straightforward, which means they're going to have some folds and they're going to have some calls, and they're rarely going to have a raise that isn't a very strong hand. So yes, you're leading into a range that contains flushes and sets and aces and all that type of shit, but you have to consider the entire width of their range. And if they're betting just any one spade here and then checking back the turn, the more they're checking back to turn, the more we're going to want to have a leading range with hands that need protection. And this is not a super happy 10. But we can still beat something like Jack of Spades 9, but that has a lot of equity. We can still beat all of his 10x combos. We can still beat Ace of Spades. I mean, there's just so many cards here that are going to be difficult for us to get to showdown on, and we have the best hand a ton of the time. I'm not saying that you want to do this every time. You definitely are going to have a check calling range on the flop along with a check raising range, and then on the turn, you're going to have a check range that does certain things, raises and also calls, folds, whatever. You have all those things, but you also want to have a leading range, especially when you're moving towards exploitability, when your opponents are just checking back the turn way too much. Like if you know that your opponent's just going to fire 10 jack here again, and you're just fine check calling, and that's okay. But if you think that your opponent's going to check back the turn, like he just tendency is to bet too many flops and check too many turns, you're going to want to have a check call lead range for sure. This is kind of the type of hand that I would want to have in that range. Whereas if you had king of spades, then you don't have much of a reason to lead the turn because your hand is less vulnerable. You don't need as much protection. You interact better on rivers. So, you know, having the king of spades versus having king of hearts here, totally different. But in this spot, I'm certainly fine just checking, and we're just going to be stuck calling again against this opponent and unfortunately playing a river. Now, that is a river where we probably can make a case for folding because your opponents are going to tend to under bluff in the spot. So, like, when you look at this, what is his value range from a combo perspective? From a combo perspective, he's going to have 9-10, and there's 6 combos of that. He's on the button. He can have offsuit. And then he's going to have 7 combos of sets, 3 of 9s, 3 of 3s, 1 of 10s. So that is going to be 7 plus those 6. That's 13. He's going to have flushes out the fucking wazoo because he can have ace high, king high, queen high, jack high with every kicker. I mean, that's just going to be, I mean, just tons. I mean, if you look at, he can have ace deuce, he can have ace 4, ace 5, like basically all the way up in that spot. So, I mean, if there's 13 minus 10, it's going to be basically 10 of every fucking, I mean, it's a 10, 20. Just, you can give just like 20 flushes and that fucking 13 is like maybe 33, and then he's going to have, and he probably has more flushes than 20, to be honest with you. I mean, he probably has 30 to 40 flush combos here, and that's not even counting something like 5-6 of spades. You start getting to 5-6 of spades, 4 something of spades, all those button spade combos that a homie's going to be playing, like homie might be playing jack 4 of spades. I mean, he's probably just going to have like 40 flushes when he's betting big here. So it's definitely a spot where folding the river is going to make a ton of sense. And that's not even talking about jacks, queens, kings, or aces, right? So he has jacks, queens, kings, and aces also in his range, and he might be value betting ace 10 on this river. Basically, the bottom of his value betting range may just be ace 10, and if he's a thinking player, maybe ace of spades 10. But for the most part, he's just going to have jacks plus, sets, flushes, 2 pair, and we are just annihilated by his value range. So if we're going to call here successfully with this type of a combo, it's going to be because we're going to see enough bluffs. And what bluffs is he really going to have here? You can have ace of spades X, you can have king of spades X, but I'm not sure that we're going to get the right ratio that we need. We basically need to call the 23 into the 53, 2.5. I mean, we're going to need him to have quite a few bluffs here in proportion to his value range, and I think his value range is just going to be like 75 combos or something that is strictly going to beat king 10. It's unlikely that he's value betting worse. It's not very likely that he just has 10 jack or queen 10. So we have a very specific, just a bluff catcher in a spot where he's just not going to have enough bluffs, and we're far behind his value range. And not to mention, we can also have flushes, and we can also have some sets, and it's just not a spot where people even bluff enough. So I think that the flop call is pretty standard. The turn call, not super happy with it. Might lead against some opponents, but clearly the turn call is okay. And then once we get to this river and he's making it this big, just in general, we're going to be folding this hand and calling with other combos. So if he has a value range here, let's say the king of spades is in our hand, that would be a better hand to call with, because now we're blocking king X of flush draws, and we are king X flushes, and we're also blocking pocket kings. Those are 2 combos that would be in his value betting range. The ace of spades would also be good because now we're blocking the nut flush, and we're also, but the ace of spades, not specifically against this guy, but you might even turn the ace of spades into a bluff in this spot, blocking the nut flush and then blocking 2 pairs and sets with your 10. So ace of spades 10 and ace of spades 9, ace of spades 3, those types of hands we could even turn into a bluff and just decide to shove. But again, you're only going to really want to do that if you think that you need to. From a balance perspective, I mean, those are fine combos. From a bet sizing, stack size, and exploitative perspective, maybe this is a dude that just doesn't have a folding range here. So even though balance, we can make that bluff and not lose money in the long term because we're not over bluffing versus our value range, we'd make more money by not having a bluff against a guy who doesn't have a folding range. So just easily fold this combo. And it looks like we're going to call and get annihilated. So homie had 5-6 of hearts. So the one thing that we can take away from that is that he's betting far too many flops, first of all, which means check raising more flops is going to make a lot of sense. So I'm probably going to adjust my check raising range, and I'm going to check raise him more, because that's just like crazy wide to be betting the flop. And then double barreling there as well with no fold equity and no actual equity. That guy is certainly a casual / weaker player. Wouldn't even put him in a bad reg category. And then he gets extremely lucky on the river, but it's not so much about him getting lucky. It's just that we know that we're eclipsed there in that spot. Like, there's just no way we can ever profitably call that river or bluff. So the river's got to be a very clear fold, and I would make an adjustment by check raising more against this guy. Check raising more is going to be the first adjustment we make. Second adjustment is going to be maybe even check raising more turns against this guy, like check call flops and then check raise some more turns. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that we can do. And I mean, the river is just kind of hard to say what his river frequency is going to be like because we didn't really see a blank. So on a different river, maybe he bluffs again, but maybe he just decides to give up. I mean, it's hard to say. We don't really get any information there when we don't see the river not connect with his hand. But yeah, it doesn't even matter that he ended up showing up with the straight in that spot because he's just going to have so many combinations that beat us anyway that everything that we said previous would hold true, and his value range just went a little wider than we would expect. Few combos that we didn't expect him to have in that spot. So we've got the ace-4, and again, I like defending there, and we are just going to bet this queen-5 of hearts, and we are probably going to bet the river as well up there. I don't mind double barreling, try to get him to fold some king-x combo or some 9x combo. We are bluffing with the best hand sometimes up there with the queen, and he's certainly never going to fold an ace. And we should definitely be attacking here with ace-4. When your opponent checks back this board texture, you can have a ton of 6x, you can have 7-9. He doesn't have 7-9 anymore. You just have a tons of hands. So I'm good attacking this board with the check back, and I'll probably just double barrel that shit. I'm good just checking back here with the ace against this guy. He's kind of wily, and I think that against this guy, I'm kind of just on the fence, you know? Like, on one hand, we have the ace of hearts. He probably doesn't have 9-10. He probably doesn't have that many queens. I kind of want to just call him, but this is a type of guy that might just be bluffing with, like, 3-4 or something like that. But, I mean, he definitely has queens. Don't get me wrong. He definitely has queen-x combos in his range, but he definitely doesn't have a flush, and he doesn't have that many queens because he's going to bet queen-10. He's going to bet queen-9. He's probably going to bet queen-king, but maybe not always. I mean, if he has a queen, it's generally going to be queen-king or some weirdo queen like queen-6. So I don't even hate calling this river against this opponent, but I think the prudent play would just be folding more than anything else. Like that's the prudent play. Like, we're probably going to be folding, but I kind of feel like we could bluff catch this guy a bit light. Maybe we'll just pick a slightly better spot since dude might even just have random jack 3 or some shit. He might just have a random jack or a random queen. And yeah, but I generally think he doesn't really have that many queens here, unless it's a queen that does not connect with the board some. You know, the queen-9 and the queen-10, those are generally going to bet. Queen-8, clearly bet. Queen-jack, clearly bet. So he doesn't really have that many queens. He's like, what, queen-king? Queen-king and then abstract queens of the suited variety with no kicker. But yeah, folding is fine. Folding is prudent. He definitely just seems like super over aggro type bro. We check. And if we had the king of hearts here, I'd be okay check raising. But given that we have nothing, I'm just going to fold. And fold the queen-5 offsuit. Raise it on the button with 8-9 offsuit on table 4. And I like 3-betting here as long as this dude behind us is not coming over the top all willy-nilly or cold flatting a lot. And we're definitely c-betting on the ace-king-9 board. We have a huge range advantage, and our 9 needs protection from gut shots and overcards and all that type of shit. Well, they're one and the same there. And now I think we end up just checking this hand down, given that we're basically just trying to fold him off of a king now or protect our hand, and he has a bunch of ace-x combos. And we'll just check this down, hope he just has queen-10 and something like that. Unfortunately, he's got a slightly pip. That's okay. Let me go back here real fast and see what's going on with this Jack-6 suited guy. So it looks like we're going to min-raise. We get flatted by the fish. The casual guy, come on, fish. And this is a board which favors us. We've got backdoor draws. I'm going to bet bigger than this. This is a board texture where you want to put pressure. I mean, against this guy, he's playing so loose and zanily anyway. You really want to polarize his his range by making bigger bets, because if he just has pocket sixes, he might decide to float you here like a whack job versus a small bet. But if you make it like 350, he's just going to have to play a slightly more straightforward range. So the best way for you to narrow down your opponent's holding when your opponent is kind of a weirdo, sort of slightly unpredictable, is to make bigger bets with a tighter range. So here we have a nut blocker and we have the backdoor flush draw, which is an okay hand to be betting. It's a little bit more difficult against this guy, but the kind of hands we're going to get folds from eventually from him are going to be 10x, king x, queen x, jack x, and probably not an ace ever, really. So we want to make a bigger bet sizing because we don't want to let anything else float around, and we would rather make him play a little more straightforwardly and give ourselves the ability to read his hand a little bit better by limiting what he can continue with. And then if he shows us that he's still going crazy, then we'll have to make more adjustments. So remember, this is the guy that bet 12 into 18 on that queen 5-2 rainbow board when we had pocket sixes. So he's just kind of marching to the beat of his own drum, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah, I would bet here, but I would bet closer to 380 or something. You really just want to bomb it. And then when he check raises, you know, a lot of the times his value range can go all the way down to ace X, and he just thinks it's a strong hand. I'm just going to fold. We have a gut shot, but it's an obvious gut shot. We're probably chopping or not getting paid off. We do have a backdoor flush draw, but again, we're really sort of stretching here, and I don't think we're always going to win a big pot if we hit. If this was a different spot where, let's say we have queen jack of spades and the 10 is a 2 of clubs. In that scenario, we have a gut shot to the nuts, and if he has an ace, he's very likely to play a huge pot, and we're likely to get good value if we hit our nut gut shot. So I think the value of your draw and the likelihood that your implied odds are higher or lower depending on texture scenario is important. So here I think our implied odds are relatively low, and we're not really going to have that many opportunities to bluff despite having position. So I would just fuck off essentially and look for a better spot overall. We decide to call. We get a brick on the turn. Home slice is probably going to bet his 11 or 12 like he does. There it is. And we are just going to fold the turn. So I think that we're sort of seeing, I wouldn't say a pattern of bleeding chips, but there's some of these spots where it kind of looks like you should be calling, but I think that you could think a little bit more about how the hand is going to progress, how the opponent is playing, how things are going to, you know, essentially pan out on turns or rivers, and you should definitely be folding far more. I would say that that's the first couple of things. C-bet a bit less often, use a bit more game theory oriented combinations when you are choosing to bet. And really, this is an opponent who is giving us some very clear ways to adjust to him. So, yeah, I mean, you could even make a case for just checking back this flop and attacking checking ranges twice type of a deal. I think if we're playing like this, he's going to win money against us a lot because we're essentially playing right into his game where he's just super kind of loose and kind of on the spewy side, and we're kind of getting involved with him at the same time loosely, and whenever both players are playing loosely like that, he's winning the looseness war. So I'd say we're bleeding money to him at this point in time. We're gonna have to tighten it up, find some better spots, find some spots to make him fold, find some spots to get value bets in, just be a little bit more patient against him, and just sort of craft our strategy around his bad bet sizing, his looseness, all that type of shit. So again, this is board texture up here. I don't like this as a c-bet. If you have a backdoor flush draw, okay. Otherwise, you have two overcards. You can take this hand and attack double checking ranges. Basically, if you don't have a hand that's got backdoor draws, you don't have a board texture that's that good to c-bet, when the board texture favors your opponent, I would much rather attack double check ranges than c-bet too wide. Because if you c-bet too wide, they're going to call a lot. You're going to check the turn and fuck off on the river too much, and they're just going to win a lot of small pots against us. But these hands that are kind of trashy, no backdoor flush draw, just two overs on a board that doesn't favor us, those types of textures, those types of hands, I prefer to just check back and then maybe move into exploitability when it comes to versus their double check range. Because if they, let's say the turn is a 6 and they check again, well, chances are they're just going to fold by the river a lot of the time. They're going to call with a 5 and fold the river. They're going to call with 4s or 3s and fold the river. Check raise a 6 some percent of the time. Maybe slow play a 6 some, you know, it kind of depends. But generally, your opponent is going to reveal the strength of their hand a lot on the turn because all these players are not really balanced, so they're not going to have strong hands in their betting or their checking ranges. They're going to play more straightforward, in a sense that if they bluff as a semi-bluff with their draws, they're probably going to have some of those, and otherwise they're just betting pairs or better and then checking pairs or better that aren't getting to showdown. So if they're betting the turn, chances are they have 7s or 8s or a 6 on a 6 turn, say the turn 6 of clubs, and if they're checking, generally they're going to have something like a deuce or a 5, and then with some of their hands they'll have a mixed strategy. Like some guys will still bet a 5 on the turn, sure, but I think that versus check-check, you can double barrel very exploitatively, and this is exactly the kind of combo that would benefit from seeing another turn card. Maybe we can bluff them in position. Maybe they give us a little opportunity, and maybe we hit one of our 6 outs as well, which is not insignificant from an equity perspective. That's just going to happen about 1/7 or 14, whatever the fuck, 1/7, 1/8 at the time. We hit that 14%, whatever. So I mean, it's actually a decent spot to just check back and then double barrel versus a second check and try to abuse board texture and unprotected checking ranges rather than over c-betting the flop where they're just not really going to be folding that much and we don't ever want to barrel. So I guess that would be the other good point, is asking yourself who this board texture is going to favor, and do I have a lot of fold equity right now? And if I don't, do I want to barrel this combo? Because if this board texture is 10-5-2 rainbow, this is a very clear c-bet. And if it's 9-5-2 rainbow, this is a perfectly fine c-bet. Once you start getting into 8x below, 8-5-2, 7-5-2, 6-5-2, those are relatively bad for a hand like king-queen. Not going to really get involved with those in those spots. All right, we got aces and we have ace-jack. So this is exactly the kind of scenario with ace-jack where I would not bet the flop. You're not going to get a fold from this come-on fish guy. He's playing every hand. He's trying to outplay you. And this hand would definitely benefit from seeing an ace, a club, a fucking, a jack. I know. So you're going to see 15 outs. I mean, like 30% of the time plus, you're going to have a card on the turn that's good for you. And maybe there's a world where we can bluff him on a king or a queen as well. But for the most part, you're not going to want to get check raised here, first of all. And second of all, you're not going to get a lot of folds from this guy. Third of all, you just have the best hand a good bit of the time. So this is exactly the spot where we want to slow down. We want to play less streets. We want to play smaller pots. We want to control the size of the pot more often, especially when we have middling equity. This is a middling hand where it's good sometimes, and we have a lot of ways to improve on the turn that will make our hand the best hand if it isn't already. But we don't want to play 3 streets against a guy like this who's just kind of speeding around, spewing it off a little, because those are the exact scenarios where we're bleeding money to this dude. So I would make the adjustment and just not be betting this hand in general. And I'm not always c-betting this ace type of a combo either, but definitely not against this guy. And then you see this turn card, and it's kind of a mixed bag, because if he has 10-8, if he has 10-7, if he has 10-9, if he has ace-10, if he has any of those 10x combos, it's bad. You're not really going to get that much fold equity against this guy. He might not even fold a 4. Like, what's the purpose of betting this turn as a semi-bluff? The purpose would be to get a fold from a better hand. Does he have ace-queen or ace-king? No, we don't have to worry about those. So that means that what? His better hands are pairs. His better hands are a pair or better. Not to mention 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 6 suited. Any of the 10s that float to flop are getting there. You can even have king 10 of diamonds, king 10 of hearts. He's not folding those combos. The 10 of clubs is good in that it increases our equity, but the only reason why we would semi-bluff here would be because we were trying to get him to fold a better hand, or we were playing in a balanced manner, and this would be one of our bluffs on the turn. But that's not really going on here against this opponent. Against this opponent, he's not folding that often, so therefore we're going to have less fold equity, and we have one of our higher equity hands. And if you bet 7 on this turn and he check raises to like 27, we don't want to play that big of a pot. We want to just check the flop. We want to just check this turn back, realize our equity, not get check raised in a spot where the 10 does improve a lot of his hands to hands that might decide to check raise. What if homie's like gorilla read is that you got a 9 and he's trying to check raise you for value with like 10 jack or some weird shit, you know? A lot of weird full moon scenarios can happen in spots like this. So you definitely want to just slow down, realize that the only reason why we're really bluffing here would either be for balance or to get him to fold a 4 or a 6. You know, we're only getting value from very few combos here, like 5, 7 and shit. So it just, basically just give up. We bet very small, which I hate. Like, if you're going to use a bet here, your bet sizing has to be big. Remember, if you bet 4, this guy's just going to call you with a 4. He's going to call you with a 6. If you bet 15, well, maybe this motherfucker's going to fold king 4. You know what I mean? Like, we might actually have fold equity if we bomb the fuck out of it. That being said, they're unpredictable, and I would rather have just checked the turn, realize my equity. Very easy to play on the river. You spike a jack, you spike an ace, you can call or value bet, you spike a club, hopefully you can stack him, raise the river, bet if check to. You know, maybe there's a couple other cards we can bluff, like a king or a queen, but probably just playing straightforward here for the most part. But yeah, I think that betting, while it would be better than just folding your hand outright, I think it's way worse than checking against this opponent, and I think your bet sizing is of the poorest that you could make it. This is a type of bet sizing you would want to use if you had a hand like pocket 7s, pocket 8s, or a 9. Or a 10, you'd probably want to bet bigger with a 10. But yeah, this is a bet sizing that's going to be like, I'm going to bet the turn with a hand that's good sometimes, it needs some protection, and then I'm going to check back the river a lot of the time. I'm going to go for that, what I call reverse initiative bet, where you bet a sizing on the turn that's going to allow you to check back the river. But against this opponent, we're going to have a completely different strategy. And clearly with our king-queen on table 2, we're going to be giving up, 3-betting our aces. And unfortunately for him, we do get there, so that it will hopefully work out in our favor. And I like your $11 bet sizing; that's good. But unfortunately for us, he didn't really do anything. But that's okay. A lot to be said in that hand. Like we kind of got lucky in that spot. I think we were just going to bleed a lot of chips against this dude a lot of the time. So we're going to be betting here, and bet sizing is good. Clearly, it's like a mediocre but okay flop texture. We get called by both guys. There's no way we're not just going to shove with that pot, so just go all in with your aces and don't worry about it. And let me go back and see what's happening with 10-8 here, because I think we have a spot where we should probably be bluffing. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, so 10-8, and we have a call on the button, and I'm okay just checking this. If he's got like a wide limp fold range, then you could just raise it up. And yeah, it's hard for you. Well, I don't really like this lead. All right, let's talk about the lead here. So when you're leading in this spot, you're essentially saying that you're having an ace or better. And I think that a lot of the types of hands that a guy's going to be limping on the button, going to be suited connectors, so he's going to have some flushes. Having the 10 of spades is good in that regard, but you're not really going to have a lot of aces here. He's going to have all the aces if he's limping the button with a wide range. Then he can have just random ace 4. I think we're just running into too many hands. So I would rather just check the flop and either check raise or check call and then see what happens on the turn. Even with the 10 of spades, it's not bad to just check call the flop. If you think your opponent's going to play straightforwardly, check back, fold a lot of rivers. So I would rather check call more than anything else, just play my range rather than my specific hand. I mean, you check call the flop, you can have the occasional ace, and you can have queen X. Obviously, you can have some flushes. So it makes a lot of sense to just check call the flop and bet versus checking ranges. Like if he checks back and the turn is the 6 of clubs, you basically just get to bet twice, probably print money in that scenario. And, you know, if you leading out, though, it just doesn't really do that much for us here. So I don't really like leading out. It's going to call with bigger spades. It's going to be difficult for us to double barrel. He's never going to fold an ace. He's rarely going to fold a queen. Just bad scenario overall. So I'm not really happy with the lead out. I probably would have raised in position. I thought that for a minute there, for whatever reason, pre-flop, I thought that we didn't have position, but seeing that we had position, I definitely raised pre-flop, not close. If he limped the button, then I'm okay with the check, but since we have position and he limped the small blind, definitely raised pre-flop. But yeah, still, the post-flop is the same. I wouldn't... I think it's a little bit better to be betting versus his check on the flop, that's for sure. But I think that checking back and then betting twice is also pretty decent. But if you do bet the flop, you're probably going to want to double barrel and then maybe triple barrel in this scenario with the 10 of spades. So yeah, everything I said was relevant if he had limped the button. The fact that we have position means we want to raise pre-flop, and that the bet on the flop is not bad. I thought that he had position on us and we let out, so that was a mistake on my part. But if you are going to bet, then we're probably going to be multiple barreling here to get him to fold combos that either brick out with his Jack X, Queen X, you know, Jack of Spades, King of Spades, and then of course Queen X combos, and we're obviously never going to get a fold from Ace X or now 6 of Spades X in this scenario. But I think that's okay. We definitely are in a double barrel to side river when we do have position, but definitely raise pre-flop. We got pocket kings over here. And it looks like we're going to go for bet, check, bet. Bet, check, bet. Oh, come on, man. You at least got to bluff the river. But yeah, he's got all the aces. We don't have the aces. And I probably just check back and then double barrel versus checking ranges with the 10 of spades a lot. But if I do bet it, I'm double barreling. And of course, we can just check back on this flop. Bad news bears. Call the turn. Relatively straightforward to play the kings here. We could decide to turn this into a bluff in some scenarios. We do block king-queen pretty hard. We don't block spades. But he does have a ton of aces, so it's not all that amazing in general. I think I'm fine just checking the king-9 against straightforward players. Betting is perfectly okay, depending on how your opponent is interacting with c-bets. I mean, clearly, you can have a jack here, so can he. And if he doesn't have a jack, he's generally just going to be giving up a lot. So I have a mixed strategy on those paired boards. I definitely bet some, and I definitely check some. Your specific combo is certainly fine to bet, given you're blocking king jack and jack 9, which are two of his jacks that he would be calling with preflop. So I like that. I like that. We get 3-bet, and we're just going to flat call with our ace 10 of the diamond variety. We're going to play this ace 10 hand, and then we're going to go to the next portion of the video, guys. We're going to go to the next video because we are 30 minutes in. All right, so we're going to flat call with ace 10, 3-bet, ace king, raise it up with kings. Oh my god, this is crazy. Yeah, just flat call with your ace 10 suited. It just plays too well post flop. He's on the button. You know, chances are that he has you dominated quite a bit, but what can you do? And we get a 3-bet. We 4-bet our kings. Good sizing. Getting all that. Not much we could do. I don't really like going all in here just because he basically plays binary, and he's probably going to have a well, never mind. He's going to have a dollar and a dream. So that dude gets it in with 8s, which is whack. This guy's getting in with queen jack, which is a sick value shove. But in general, I just kind of prefer to flat call and play post flop. Clearly, we're just going to get it in against a value range that crushes us. And I would say that they under 3-bet bluff in that spot, and they're probably not going to 3-bet call. So I don't know if you had a read there or whatever. If you did, good on you, sir. Nice hand. But in general, we just want to flat there pre-flop. Good 3-bet with the ace queen. And we're just going to call with ace queen here pre-flop. Our hand is a bit too strong to fold in this day and age. He did 4-bet pretty quickly though, and if these games tend to play relatively nitty, then I don't mind a fold pre-flop, but we're probably just going to go ahead and call. And we're just going to check and screw off on this board. We block ace king down to 12 combos, and he has at least 15 combos of queens, kings, aces, and then he has another you know, jacks or maybe 10s, but definitely jacks as well. You know, like 21 combos there over the 12. So he's going to have an overpair far more often than he's going to have an ace king we can bluff him off of. And some people don't even fold ace king in that spot. They just go bananas. All right, we're going to be right back, guys. If you like this ace king in our hand right here and you want to see more of it, then come back for video 3.